Well, welcome back to our second Inside BBI with John and Eric this week. I'm John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, before we get to anything that's going to get us going, I'm going to start off with I'm going with a little Modelo. I know I have usually other stuff, but I'm actually running a little low, so we're going with the Modelo today.
I have what's more interesting is the glass I've got. My wife, you can't see it. My wife got an etched Big Blue Interactive pint for
Oh,
me. It's
oh,
kind of cool.
I
So
like
that was
that.
one of my Christmas presents. And so I've got a Brooklyn IPA that I'm drinking right now, Brooklyn Brewery. So it's actually pretty
Nice.
good. I'm happy. I've got my glass. I've got my beer. I'm ready to go. I'm mad at the Giants, but we'll get into that in a sec.
Absolutely. So we did our show earlier. It turned out longer, and you know what? We're going to do two things in the future. One, we're not going to tell you if it's long, and you're just going to live with it. And we're going to try to make them shorter, but we won't talk about the fact that it went longer. This one is going to be shorter. This is designed to be shorter. We're going to take a look at a number of things. We didn't script it out, but we did kind of schedule what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about first the upcoming game. And you've got some thoughts already on what's been kind of leaking out, as we mentioned the other day.
Not leaking out. Daboll just spoke and he said we're going to play our starters and we're going to do everything that we can possibly do to win this game. Which, hello, the Eagles probably want you to do, dummies. All right, back up again. I get it. Daboll may or may not be here. We'll get into that in a second. Take the power out of his hands to have a decision on this game. He should not be able to determine the outcome. If he's gone, he shouldn't have any control on who's playing on Sunday. If he's staying and they're trying to win this game, they're bigger morons than I even realize. Because the Eagles probably want you to win the game, idiots, because they want to hurt you. So we may go from 1 to 9 in 2 weeks. And anyone who says that doesn't matter and you try to win the games no matter what, I'm sorry, you're wrong. You're being dumb, and it doesn't work that way. And they're going to say, no, it does work that way. You take the reins out of Daboll's hands, you play the backups, and you try to lose this game. If we're picking ninth, eighth, 7, 8, or 9 in the draft, that means we're going to go into this draft after we had this historically bad year, having a worse draft pick than we had last year because we picked 6th last year. So it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. If they're actually trying to win this game, John Mara owns this team. John Mara needs to step in and say, we want to lose this game. But Dan Dugan just put a quote from last year that said, in the same situation that Mara said, he doesn't matter if it's a meaningless game. He wants to beat the Eagles no matter what. It doesn't matter. It does matter though. I'm venting again, but that's where I'm coming from. We want
Well,
to
I
keep
mean,
it short.
yeah, no. It's kind of funny because you would normally say play your backups to lose the game, but we are playing most of our backups. I mean, to be quite frank, we had Drew Lock. It sounds like we're going to be missing at least 2/3 of the offensive line. JMS is probably going to be out. Neal's going to be out. So we're playing backups at tackle again. We're moving people around, whatever. But the Eagles are going full on. We're not even interested in you at all. If Barkley's not playing, he made a nice little video for the to help you sleep at night. Shot at John
Yeah.
Mara. I got to be honest. It's the one time that I actually like Barkley's kind of off-field stuff. He's always been kind of bland. He's just been kind of a,
Yeah.
But that was funny. And you know what? Good for you. That was a nice little shot.
Well, he should have all the room he wants to sort of grow a little bit here. And he's actually taken the high road and been pretty classy. So
Right.
that I wasn't offended by that. I mean, if that was about as harmless an FU as you could put out there, and he has every right to do that. I mean, if you were in his shoes, you would kind of feel the same way. So
Well, and if we didn't have the behind the scenes look of Hard Knocks, none of that other stuff would have been known.
right.
But you did, and you made a real point of it. You gave it's carte blanche to use it at this point, and you know what? He sacrificed going for a record, which he could have done. Like if you're a selfish guy, you could go, you know what? I want that record. I want it, and I want to do it against my former team. But he didn't. He's like, I'm okay with sitting. It's for the better of the team
And he
that
could have had
happens.
the record if he didn't pull himself in the first Giants game too.
Also true.
Right.
Also true. Anyway, so looking at this, we've heard the different things. There's a couple of things that have leaked out recently that really we talked about pay attention to these guys. There's one guy that I don't really pay attention to as much anymore because he just sounds so, I don't know. It just he's pro Giant in a way that it no longer seems like he's actually in the know. Just that's he just wants to be in the know, and that's Art Stapleton. And I know I'm probably ruining any chance of Art coming on the show. We have talked before about him coming on, but the point of this though is he suddenly wrote this article that said, if the Giants decide there's a quarterback that they want, it doesn't matter where they pick in the draft, they should trade up and get him. Do you think that that's actually something he's heard within the building, and this is just being floated out there, that the Giants will be willing to go and spend to get up? Because it wouldn't surprise me. We're stupid enough to tell everybody in the world what we might do.
It's an excellent question. I don't know if Art is fed stuff like Paul Schwartz has been in the past, and like Vacchiano has seemed to have been fed in the past. I don't know the answer. I have noticed that Art certainly has changed to more of a cheerleader in the last year.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
seems, I mean, he's not on their payroll, but he certainly tweets like he is. So I don't know if that's because he wants to make sure I don't know. I don't know if you could give truth serum to these guys, what they would really tell you. I don't know, but and then they're getting mad. Fans are getting mad at them for sounding like apologists for the current mess. So I don't know why they're getting mad at that, because we're all pissed off at this. Look,
Right.
again, I want to put this out there before fans jump down my throat again on this. I understand. I'm I'm as big a Giants fan as there is, people. I
Sure.
have a website. I want them to win, but sometimes you have to have bad things to happen in order for you to get better. And we've already probably lost our ability to get the quarterback that we wanted. Now, you've argued in the past maybe that's a good thing because they can't pick players, but they've probably lost their ability because they won against the Colts. They probably can't pick the quarterback that they wanted, number one. So that's probably off the table. And now, if they drop down to again 7, 8, 9, then we're great. I mean, this has been the worst. I said it today, and I mean this. If the Giants were run by a psychopath who secret intent was to actually hurt the team, the Giants wouldn't be doing anything different than they're doing right now. And I firmly believe that, because you wouldn't do that. I mean, you would try to win. If you hated the Giants, you would try to win this game. And that's why you had Eagles beat writers writing last week that the Eagles should throw this game to hurt the Giants' draft position. So the Eagles understand this. How come the Giants can't understand this? I mean, it's
there's a huge difference between blatantly obvious we're not going to try to win, and then the opposite of the spectrum of you saying we are trying to win. What you basically could just say is, listen, we got a game to play. Guys are going to play. I don't know how that's going to shake out, but we might try some folks here or there and do that, and just say that. But the second you say you're trying to win, now here's my question to you. Let's start. We don't care ultimately about predicting the result. You and I do not care about predicting the result. We'd like them to lose, but we're not going to make a prediction on the result. That's not what this show's about. Let's kind of move to Daboll. We talked about Schoen and Daboll before, but we didn't talk about Daboll by himself. So let's start with him. Does he try to win this game because he knows he's the coach coming back and he feels this needs to cement it more? He's got to carry that forward. That's the message in there. Or does he not know he's coming back? And that's partly why he's like, we're going to win this game.
Well, this gets back to what I was talking about the last podcast, which was far too long. And for those who didn't watch it because it was too long, I'll quickly repeat myself here. Whether he's been told he's coming back or not makes a huge difference in terms of how to approach this game and his mindset. So it's a perfect question. So if he thinks he's on thin ice, or he's been told he is gone, he's going to try to win this game. There's no motivation for him not to try to win this game if he's already been told he's gone, because he wants to go out on a high note. He may even want to be like, F you, Giants. I'm going to do this. Or if he thinks he's on thin ice, and again, if he thinks Mara's still, as we've heard, we don't know if it's true, if Mara's still trying to make up his mind, and he wins this game, which ironically would really hurt the franchise. But if he wins this game, so yes. But if he's been told he's coming back and he's trying to win this game, then he's an idiot. and I'm going to stop pulling my punches on this because if they're being stupid and they're being stupid, I mentioned it. I mentioned it to my wife just a few minutes ago that what Dable said, and she goes, "Are they idiots?" I mean, she gets it again. So I mean, you're. I don't want I want the Giants to win another Super Bowl, but in order to win another Super Bowl, they've got to get better players, and I don't want them dropping from 1 to 9 in the last 2 weeks of a meaningless, awful, atrocious train wreck of a season because they beat an Eagles team that sat all their starters, and that's their whole point. This is an exhibition game to them. So if you're John Mara, are you stupid enough to go, "Yay, we beat their backups with our starters"? I mean, if he's that stupid, we're in a lot of trouble. So Giants, if you're listening out there, and you're probably not because you probably don't like the message, wake them f up and stop doing this crap because you're killing yours. If we pick ninth in this draft after going 2-13, it's unbelievable. What's your reaction? I mean, I know you
Well,
don't care about the draft pick as much,
well, see
but
that it's true to a point until we got to the point that we were at where I said, I don't want to drop down at this point, down, just because of a couple of wins at the end. Because we lost so many games in a row that there's not. It's different when, like last year, we were in a few games that had they just gone the other way, you might have snuck in maybe an 8-win season out of there, and that would have been impressive with the mess that we had. That's different. We come into this year and we kind of look bad right off, and we steal the game in Cleveland. And even that win, now looking back on it, I mean, Cleveland's pretty pathetic. Then you get to 2, and then we just lose, and we lose, and we lose. Then the losses become there. This idea of, well, they lost a bunch of, as Shane said at the break, we lost a bunch of like 1-score games. Who gives a shit? Almost every a team across the league is losing 1-score games. There weren't as many blowouts as you seem to think across the league, because you know why? Look how many teams have losing records in
exactly.
They're so bad.
They lost 10 games in a league filled with shitty football
Right.
teams, a lot of shitty football teams with horrible records, and he's bragging about being 1-score games. Talk about lowering the bar. We're not. This league is awful right now, and the Giants can't even play anywhere near 500 football. And we were getting blown out. It was 35-14, 34-7, whatever it was, 33, whatever. We're starting to get blown out. And then the Colts game happened. What is it with this franchise all of a sudden? If they win one game, like the Vikings game, the playoff game, and now the Colts game, it somehow becomes the thing.
I mean, in reality, it's the Colts game twice.
Yeah.
We blew them away to essentially secure our playoff spot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then I believe, didn't we lose to Philadelphia in the last game of the season of 22? I'm pretty sure we did. Davis Webb played that game, and we did lose. Yeah. We lost that game
because we're always playing the Eagles last now. It seems
that's another thing. We could talk about that another time. I think that the NFL needs to change the way they schedule the games now, based on how the seasons are at the end. I think you make your division games more meaningful if they're happening within like 15, 16, 17, but make them in week 18. Lots of times these teams are out.
But the Giants at the end of the season in an NFC East game because they're going to be already out of it. So if you're going to play them up front, because by November, we'll be out of it. So
with that in mind, what you just said a minute ago, I don't care about the draft position per se that much, because at the moment I don't really have anybody that I think is the guy. But I was more worried that one would be a hand forced. And if people out there do not believe that the Giants do shit based on perception, based on what they feel like people will like or love, and it's not necessarily the fans, it's other media people, it's other old players, what they think. So when you have Deion Sanders talking up his kid, and his kid's talking about going number 1, and you've got all these other people chiming in, Sanders, even if he's not your top quarterback, when you're picking one, what are you going to do? They're not going to trade down and risk losing both quarterbacks. They'll end up going with Sanders, and I'm not sold on that. I feel like we have a George Costanza situation where you need to do the opposite of whatever it is you would normally do. You just have to.
But John, you said it perfectly. They're concerned about perception, but the morons don't seem to understand that the bulk of their fan base wants them to lose this game. So
I don't think they care about the fan base.
Angry. This is what it gets when I get back to if they were run by a psychopath who actually wanted to hurt the team, he would do the same thing, because right now in this horrible, awful situation we're in, Giants fans, most of them, want to lose this game. And
Right.
if they think that this is going to be a win for them by winning this game, they're insane. It's not going to be a win for them, because most people are going to be going, "What the hell are you doing?" Because the only thing we had to look forward to coming out of this year was getting a very, very, very high pick where they would have their pick of the litter of the players available. And I get what you're saying, that this isn't a clear cut, who's number one, who's number two. But when you drop from 1 to 9,
Oh
that's
yeah,
a huge, huge,
agreed.
huge. It's especially the top of the first round. That's a huge gap. Might that still work out for them? Sure, but it's not supposed to work that way, and the odds are it won't work that way. And again, we lost out on Jaden Daniels and Drake May because we won meaningless games at the end of last year, and that screwed us. And anyone arguing that it didn't is flat out lying to themselves. And could it happen again now? I don't know, because the quarterbacks aren't that clear cut. But if you trust your evaluation process and your scouts, and we saw Daboll and Shane saying they wanted, or we at least saw Daboll saying he wanted Jaden Daniels, and we know they tried to trade Drake May. So apparently, sometimes, except for if his name is Daniel Jones, they can evaluate a quarterback. They've just taken away their ability to maybe draft one of those two quarterbacks that they like more than anybody else. That's gone. That's off the table, unless you give up the farm to trade up again, which they hurt themselves. So you give up next year's number one when you didn't have to do it, and next year's number one could be a very, very
Yeah,
high
you
pick.
can't do
Because
that.
did you see what our schedule is next year? Our home game is all playoff teams from this. We're playing the Chiefs, the quote unquote bad team on our schedule because they had a bad year is the 49ers. Our schedule next year is way worse than it was this year. So next year's pick could be even hot, could be in a draft that's supposed to have more quarterbacks, supposedly. Again, like
Sure.
you said, we don't know how that works. But my point is, you didn't have to even trade away next year's number one if you
What if
just lost last week and you lose this week.
so I want to only stick on this game for so long because
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to
sorry.
talk. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no, no. You're fine.
I'm mad.
I no, you should be. What if Giants Central has looked at things the way that it is right now, and they don't have Sanders or Ward as being what they would say would have been top 10 quarterbacks? Because we saw how they looked at quarterbacks last year. We saw the way they talked
Right.
about it. We saw the list that they brought out of all the failures. What if they've looked at both those guys and they're like, they're not top 10 guys? I'm not overly concerned right now because maybe they're looking elsewhere. If they're looking elsewhere, then the draft pick still matters to me in a different realm, but that's for another show.
And that would be a more tolerable situation. That would be more digestible. But again, why would you want to potentially lose another player at a position that you like
Right.
by winning a meaningless game? And the work, and I keep seeing people making this argument, John, and again, I can understand the rationale. So I'm not going to say I'm 100% right and everyone
Sure.
else is
No, no,
wrong. I'm
no.
not going to do that. But I do not. The worst case scenario to me now is trading up to get Sanders or Ward by giving up our
Stuff next
second
year.
round pick this year, fourth round pick this year, first round pick next year. If they do that, I mean, that's the word. I mean, because if you do that, then it's like, why didn't you just blow the Colts game? Why did you play Malik Neighbors? Why didn't you just play your scrubs and just tank the last two games? All they had, they tanked. They didn't tank them, but as I said before, they got in a position. They spotted themselves 13 losses. All they had to do, they didn't have to tank 17 games. They only had to tank two. The last two games, and they would have gotten the first pick. That's what I'm mad at. And the other thing is I'm mad at. And again, we're repeating ourselves here. Is say you don't like those quarterbacks. If you had the number one pick and somebody did, you could have traded down
Sure.
and picked up another number one next year in a draft that's supposed to be much stronger next year, which would be sure nice to have that other. So I just what why are we going to be sitting here in September, October, November going, oh man, it was really cool to beat the Colts. oh man, it was really good to beat the backup on the Eagles. I mean, we're not going to be doing
Yeah,
that.
the third string more than likely. The
Yeah,
third
no
string.
one's going to care. Like I don't care. You don't care. No one cares that
I
we
don't care.
beat the Packers last year. Nobody gives a shit that we beat the Packers last year. It didn't mean anything.
All right, so let's look.
Ah!
Let's look at the Daboll part of this
Yeah.
then. We know what we would like to happen in this game, and ultimately, it doesn't really matter what happens per se with the Giants. What we don't want is any of those other teams to lose and we win and move down. If everybody else is, if it stays even and we end up at 4, fine, forget it. We end up at 4. That's the way it is.
That's the best we can hope for.
That's
Probably.
at this point. You don't want to drop below. You don't want to go below 4. Let's look at Daboll. I hate bringing up other people's shows, especially those who have way more followers currently than we do. But I'm going to say this because I watched
Bobby, share, subscribe.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like I think we do a great job. I'm not knocking them, but I saw Skinner and Pelnick do their thing, and they basically talked about Daboll. They've done their thing about Shane.
What did they say? I didn't see it.
Yeah, so I'll share that with you. And
okay.
I also think you and I are different. I did post something earlier today. Skinner believes that they're really a package deal. They both should go, but at the very least, he feels the bigger of the problem is Shane, not Daboll. So
you can make an argument for either any direction. If anyone else, and I've seen it on BPI. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No. It's fine. I was just going to say though. And so then he gave his arguments of why on Shane. Went through his positives. He gave his positives. Right. He gave his negatives. Of course, his negatives are tied to, here's the fact that the coaching staffs that you hired them, the fact of the Jones piece, the bad look about the Barkley thing, the way you didn't fortify the old line, the failures of some of the draft picks, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Now he goes to Daboll, and he talks about Daboll. He gives some of his positives and negatives, but he feels if Shane's there, Daboll should come back, and he gave why. And here's where I have a problem. All this talk of Daboll being a quarterback whisperer has to 100% be tied to Josh Allen. There is no other pure evidence to show this. At best, you could say he made Jones palpable for 22, but Jones then got injured and regressed horribly this year,
right.
Looked really bad. Tommy DeVito doesn't look any better this year than he did last year. It was pathetically bad. Drew Lock comes in, and unless you count this last game, which, by the way, I think the Colts basically are going to fire their coach based on what just happened against us.
Probably.
So I don't see this quarterback whisperer thing that people keep talking about. Help me out. What do you think?
I don't either. I saw Andy on the website. I think Andy from Boston, I think it was, who said that Shane is really good with quarterbacks. And I was like, what quarterbacks are we talking about other than Allen? So I don't know. I mean, are you talking about because Locke had a really good game last week? That one, first of all, one game doesn't make a trend.
Yeah, go back to the week before.
Locke has done this throughout his career brief career as a pro. He has that one game where you go, and it was the Philadelphia game last year when he was when he was with Seattle. He looked good in the last minute drive, and so, but no one wants. I mean, so there's no. I agree. Keep this short. No, I don't. Where are we getting that from? And again, we had a guest on, and I think it was Cy who said it. What Allen's doing now in Buffalo, without Daboll, is actually kind of harmful to Daboll's perception right now.
Right.
So no, I've said it on record. I'm not going to repeat myself. I want to like these guys. I root for every guy I root for Joe Judge. I rooted for Shermer. I rooted for McAdoo. I rooted for Brian Daboll. I thought Coach of the Year. Sure. Finally, we got somebody here. But I don't see anything he's done anymore that makes me say come back other than continuity. I can't find anything that he's done. There isn't any game, any moment, anything that he's done this year where I said, I'd like to give him another shot. I've said, what are you hanging our hats on at this point? The point production has gone down. This again, and people are going to get mad at me for saying this. They disagree. This team had more talent than last year's team, and last year's team had more talent than the 2022 team. And people are saying, "What the hell are you talking about? The records are way worse." But if you look at if you went back and looked at those rosters, you would not trade those rosters for the rosters that we have now. So he's coaching worse right now, and that's right. So. And you've made up you said the same thing. The records are it's
the trajectory is down.
They plummeted.
Yeah. So I'll add this too, because I can't. Forgive me. I can't remember the poster's name who posted it. The point the pollster was making is Daboll coached Jones out of turnovers and restricted it to keep him from turnovers. That's actually not true. Joe Judge and Jason Garrett put the clamps on Jones after the beginning of the 20 season where he was
That's
turning the
correct.
ball over a
That's
lot.
correct.
They brought the offense in, they changed the law, and Jones he wasn't an intercepting guy. He threw few interceptions.
Fumbling,
and he cut his fumbles down
right.
like crazy.
Right.
But his touchdowns also dropped with
They
the
made
equivalent.
He played scared after that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was not Daboll. Daboll coached around what he had with Jones. And if you go back and look at 22, it's a lot of the I want to say it's not pure RPO, but there was the threat of it might be Barkley, it might be Jones. I don't know who's getting the ball. So it's not really a run pass option. It was run option. Either it might be Barkley, it might be Jones keeping it and going. And he made a lot of end arounds until teams figured it out.
Well, the thing is, I'm sorry.
No, please jump in.
I'm gonna get in trouble for I want to drink for interrupting you again.
I'm good with it.
You know, the Daboll help Jones argument would be 100% correct if you could stop time at the end of 2022.
Right.
He did. He had his second and arguably his best season because you cut out the turnovers in the 2022 season. Again, it wasn't great. Everyone who keeps saying it's great, it wasn't a great season. The offense was awful for most of the year, and it got kind of fun towards the end when they did the stuff that we were talking about. But they went into, before he got hurt last year, he was playing like crap. Again, bad offensive line, but he was still playing like crap. And then this year was the nail in the coffin. So he wasn't hurt. He had a better offensive line. The offensive line at the beginning of this year, for people who can't remember that far back, was playing really, really well. We were all saying, oh my goodness, we have an offensive line that doesn't give up sacks anymore. So before Andrew Thomas got hurt and everybody was there, our offensive line was doing good. He had all these weapons, but Jones sucked. He was awful, and they cut him. And if he's the whisperer, there should have been a progression with Jones from 2022, and it never happened. It never happened. So you can blame that on Jones, but I don't see the whisperer part there. And it wouldn't completely shock me if, and I don't think he'll stay there, but if Jones stayed in Minnesota under that coaching staff, if Jones was actually decent there, if he got thrown into the lineup with those receivers and that coaching staff, because that coaching staff does wonders with quarterbacks. You know, Cousins looked great there, leaves, he stinks. Darnold's there, and he comes in there and he looks great. So anyway, there's the whisperer. I don't see the whisperer with Daboll. I don't see it.
I think it's more myth. It's more urban legend.
It is urban legend.
And you're so to say I have confidence that he can do this. And again, I'm just saying this is what Skinner was saying. Is like I love the way he coaches. I love the way he does things. He makes things happen. And he pointed to the Colts game, and I'm like, that's a bad game.
It's one game.
It's a bad game to pick.
It's one game too.
Because when you had your starting quarterback, you could not manufacture points against teams that were at the time going nowhere. Dallas was spinning its wheels when it came to Giant Stadium
and beat us,
whatever you want to call it, Citi Field. I don't give a shit. It's Giant Stadium. We couldn't put up any points. Jones could not, and he could not manufacture it. He turns the ball over. Daboll's inconsistency in coaching. The reason he does this or does that, there's no rhyme or reason to why he does what he does.
I'm going to bring up the record. I'm going to bring up the schedule and go over the point totals here. I mean, it's bad. So the 10-game losing streak, 7 points, 3 points, 18. We had an explosion against the Commanders when we scored 22. We lost in overtime, only scoring 17, 7, 20, 11, 14, 7. We can't score. Daboll's an offensive coordinator. He's supposed to be a genius. And again, I understand we have talent issues. But again, Shane and Daboll signed off on these quarterbacks.
But that's
the other thing. Daboll wanted Jones back. They signed their own death warrant.
But do we, though?
Do we what?
Do we have a talent deficit? Because I'm going to name your wide receivers.
Quarterback, we do. I mean, definitely a quarterback.
But it doesn't matter. It's comparable because we had up until a few weeks ago, we had the same goddamn quarterback.
We have 10. There's no reason. There's no there's no worldly reason that any team in the NFL today should lose 10 games in a row, given the state of the league right now.
Well,
The
look at
league
it
is
this.
so bad that lose 10 games in a row is absurd.
But look at it this way. I know people keep yelling about the Giants' talent sucks. Giants' talent sucks. Does it? In 2022, we had Isaiah Hodgins, we had Richie James, he had Marcus Johnson at different points. David Sills was in games.
David Sills started
at
games.
wide receiver. We had Sterling Shepard until his knee just goes away. I think did he hurt his Achilles that year? Or his knee or something. We lost him for sure in 23.
Yeah.
So we had a very average, below average wide receiving core. You have Malik Neighbors, a first round draft pick. You have Wan'Dale Robinson, who's now in his third year with the team. He's coming off an injury, but he's a guy that you were really counting on.
Right.
You had Jalen Hyatt, who you traded up to get in the third round.
Illuminor was playing right tackle, not Neal. Neal was playing right tackle back then and was awful. Illuminor was playing right tackle, was much better. Andrew Thomas was Andrew Thomas. The guards are better this year, and our starting tight end that year was a third string tight end on this team.
The only thing you can really say is different, really different talent wise, is Barkley. But we managed to get two guys to kind of take his one guy role.
But Barkley's had an MVP season.
Doesn't matter for us. So if you took our receiving core right now and you threw them on the 2022 team, we're scoring more points in 2022 with those guys. For sure.
That's the head scratcher and all this. That's what I'm talking about. Daboll looked like the real deal because they turned, what's that old expression about turning chicken shit into whatever it is? I can't even remember the expression. But he had an awful roster, and him and Kafka made him acceptable by the end of the year. And it's trended in the wrong direction the last 2 years.
So this is the part that I think is the nail in the coffin if it were me for Brian Daboll. What we just said is, without question, other than I can't make it happen, it's true. If you look at the actual talent, it's true. We have better talent now than we did then at wide receiver. If we moved him over there, I think we score more points in 22. But here's the nail in the coffin. I think what we did in 22 was smoke and mirrors. We tricked people. We caught them off guard.
But that's fine.
Our defense got a shit ton of turnovers. Well, it's fine, but it's not fine if you can't replicate it.
Right, exactly. Yes.
You can't count on always having crazy turnovers from the other team.
I don't mind smoke and mirrors because that shows you have a good coach. But when you can't, like you just said, you can't replicate it, then it does you no good.
So the other thing that I think should be the nail in the coffin that people seem to forget, I blame Brian Daboll for the beginning of 23 as much as I blame anybody.
Yeah, they were soft. They weren't ready for the season.
You took the preseason like you were coming off a Super Bowl victory. We're like, oh no, Jones played that one great series. He's not playing again.
One series.
Series. We're counting on Darren Waller, and what does he do? He pulls the hamstring we were worried about late in the preseason.
After they spent the entire preseason babying him. They babied everybody in that camp. And they said, if you had a hangnail, they sat you in that camp.
People also forget, we had multiple free agent centers that we brought in. One of them got hurt, I believe. Another quit in camp. Those guys just walked away from camp. Something was off with that team. Our offensive line stuff was horrible. Then you switch coaches, right? You go get another coach. Yep. That's the other thing with Daboll. You've had problems with your coaches. You moved Kafka. You took over the offense. It's worse than it was before. You can blame the quarterback.
It's trending the wrong direction.
Do not blame Joe Schoen for Daniel Jones solely. Brian Daboll had to sign off on that or it wouldn't have happened. Right. If Daboll goes, I can't coach that guy to be any more than what we got, you're not paying him $160 million.
Yeah.
But he did.
Long story short is, and I think you're the same way I am, you got to give me some reason to keep him. And I can't come up with anything other than to say it would be all, and this is true. It would be bad to change coaches again. That's the only thing you can come up with, and that's the only thing that I think Mara is. And if we're here on Monday or Tuesday, and it looks like he's going to be coming back, the Giants fans are going to be. They're not going to be happy. And again, that doesn't mean we're right, but we've been more right than the franchise has been.
Sure,
Giants fans have been right about this team, and the management has been wrong, and the management is getting mad at us for being right.
So truth serum running through your veins. Is he going to be fired come Monday, or is he staying?
I I thought he was going to be gone given the way he was conducting those press conferences. But right now there's so much stupidity coming out of the. I mean, today just reading what they were talking about, we're going to win this game and the old Mara quotes, and now they're floating, or maybe I don't know if the reporters are full of it, but this stuff where they haven't made up their mind or they may not want to do the change. Now I'm getting nervous. So I've said before to Giants fans, don't let your emotions get the best of you. My emotions are getting the best of me right now. I'm actually afraid that they're not going to change anything. And if they don't, and they come back and we have a great year next year, I will come on the show and say I was wrong. But
Sure.
I don't think I'm wrong. And I think if they bring them back, we're going to be having this show again next year, where we'll be going, who's going to be our next coach? Who's going to be our next GM at that point?
So, but if it was your call, he'd be fired. Or
He'd
they
be
both
fired.
would.
He'd be fired. They'd be fired because I think they fired themselves the day they redid Daniel Jones. I've said that all along, that I was afraid to say that at the time, and I regret saying, but I think when they redid Daniel Jones, I think they dug their own graves. It just matters if it's going to happen now or it's going to happen this time next year. So
Yeah.
that's
So,
why I'm like, if they bring him back, I'm afraid we're wasting another year here. That's
so,
that's my
so
biggest
for
fear.
me, I'm with you. I personally, I think they both should go because you brought them together. They seem to have stuck together. None of these decisions were made solely, it's not like back in the day where Bill Parcells is getting pissed off because George Young says this is what we're doing and he
Right,
wanted to go in a different direction. They
right.
seem to be, lockstep together. If, however, you're not going to get rid of both, I am more in line with keeping Shane, who I think has thought some things through far more clearly than he gets credit for. I think his arrogance is a little bit, I think he's a little young that way. He needs to learn to kind of backstep from the arrogant part of it. But he's done some really good evaluations on players and things like that. I can't blame him for Evan Neal being a failure. I kind of blame that on the coaching a little bit too. I just don't think you take a right tackle so high
Right.
but they were so desperate for offensive line, it's not surprising. Neal was highly rated. But if that's the case, I do fire Daboll. I am not in Daboll's corner at all. Just because from 22, the shine is worn off. 23, you can say he managed it through, but there was so much shit going on behind the scenes between him and Martindale, and I'm not on Martindale's side, you know that. I,
Right.
but you're the captain, though. That shit was coming out. That's your ship. You're Kirk, you're Picard. You run that thing. Sorry, I know, Nerdville, but that's it. And it looked bad. And then you took your offensive coordinator and you moved him out. You were already kind of, lessening him in front of people anyway. You were calling plays. So
Right.
now you go, I'm gonna call the plays. This is my offense. It failed. And then you kept wheeling Daniel Jones out and kept saying, this is our best chance to win. Even if that was corporate's message to you that you had to relay, unfortunately, it's the albatross that you decided to put around your neck. And as far as I'm concerned, you can't bring a rookie quarterback in with a guy like this. So I say he gets fired. However,
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with what you said in the earlier shows and this is why I lean towards Shane. I don't think they're gonna get rid of Shane, but that's why I would lean towards Shane too, is you have said this eloquently on previous shows that the pressure on Shane and Dable, or if one comes back and the other doesn't, is going to be tremendous to draft, to reach for that quarterback, because they feel like they have no leeway, no leash, no timeline. That they let this fester another year, they're dead meat. So that's why I'm nervous. And I also have, as I've said for years, I want the quarterback, the GM, and the coach all in alignment. And if you start doing this thing again where you got a new coach with an old GM, but a new quarterback. I just would like, I wish they would just tear the Band-Aid off and just do it right for once. And I
right.
thought they did it in 2022. I thought that, except for Jones, they should have and I thought they were going to get rid of Jones. We all did. We thought Jones was
Well, when they
gone.
yanked the fifth year
Yeah,
option was off
yeah.
the table.
Because when he did that, we were all like, he's tough. We didn't even. Most of us thought Jones wouldn't even finish that season. We all thought Tyrod Taylor was going to be playing by December, and there were threads on it. People were like, they were like, I guess the game that Daniel Jones finally gets benched in 2022. And that would have been the best thing for the team. The worst thing that happened to these guys is they won in 2022 and won that Vikings game. And you never convinced me otherwise of that. And at the time, I was ecstatic. I was like,
Sure.
this is so cool and I didn't go full Mara and go, the Giants are back. I didn't do that, but it felt like we were on the way back. And then to have the rug pull out from under you, and this was going to be the tiebreaker season. 2022 good, 2023 terrible. Here's your third chance. What's going to happen? And this was it. This season was arguably True Blue Larry. Shout out to him. Watches all the shows. By the way, so is Ray in Arlington. I have to shout out to Ray because Ray's always emails me after these shows. True Blue Larry, who loves the Giants even more than I do. He mails me. He's got stuff going back decades on the Giants, and he's run out of room, and he mails me these boxes filled with programs and books and all this stuff. So now my wife's getting mad at me because our house is getting filled with all this Giants stuff. He said he stopped watching the team this year. He's been tuning. If Giants, if you're losing True Blue Larry, you've got a major problem.
Right.
He's my age, and he loves the team more than I do, and his house is filled with your stuff. And he knows, by the way, he knows more. He's always correcting their media guide because their media guide's got errors all, and he's always he knows more stuff about the team than the Giants do. He should have put the list of the top 100 players together. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But if they're losing him, they're losing the casual fan or the fan that's in between. And that's how bad this year was. This is a historically bad year.
Yeah.
And this is the tiebreaker. Get rid of them and bring somebody else in. They're not. They're going to bring back Shane. The real problem is are they going to bring back Daboll or not? And if Daboll goes on and we have a playoff year next year, I'll come on here and I'll
but a lot would have to happen. And thank you to True Blue Larry too.
Yeah.
I knew when I said it, I knew I was right. But I also it's been a long time, so I'm like, oh shit, what if I'm misremembering that? But no, he found the articles, and I knew that the Giants had pursued Moon, and there was that stuff.
Well, I reached out to him because after you said that comment, and for those who missed it, John said that Giants had pursued Warren Moon before the 1984 season because of Phil Simms' injury history, and I had vaguely remembered that. I remember seeing New York Post. Back page New York Post thing on it. And I reached out to True Blue Larry because I got 3 people email me saying, did that really happen? And so
making shit up.
Yeah. So I asked, and he found, it took him seconds. I mean, I sent him an email and he got back. I was like half an hour later. He came back with all these articles and stuff like that. So
that's awesome.
That's
awesome.
The guy they're losing.
Yeah.
He's got his whole house as an archive, and that's the guy they're losing.
So, because we're going to keep this one short.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
No,
we're not, but it's going to be a lot shorter than we normally do. But, so we both agree that, the best move really is you got to remove the stench. I just don't know how you bring a coach with so many, if they go, well, we were at a 2-game winning streak. If you bring that up one time, I swear to God, I'm going to explode.
Well,
don't brag about shit that doesn't matter.
What happens if Mara's really basing whether he comes back based on the Eagles game? That's absurd. I hope that's not the case.
I have a weird feeling, and I said this a long time ago, that I may have been more right than I thought at the time. I think the Jones thing, they had conversations off Hard Knocks where we didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, we know that.
That they basically said, look, after the 3, I think here's what I think. I think Mara said, if you want a quarterback, you tell me which ones that you want. Which ones are worth us moving to get? Williams was first, obviously. They knew that wasn't going to happen. Daniels was discussed. They knew Washington wasn't going to move, but they discussed him. And then I think May was their other opportunity. And he might have been ahead of Daniels, by the way. We don't know that. We only know that they allowed us to see Daboll say Daniels, but they were very
active. They might have had May above Daniels. They could have.
So keep in mind one other weird thing. As I finish this, I'm going to add one other thing. I think Mara probably agreed to a point that said, I'll let you trade up for one of those guys. You cannot give away the farm. But I will, if those are the guys, if you have them ranked here and you say that that's going to change, I'll let you. After that, though, we're not trading things. You need to stick with Jones. We've already got him, because I don't want to take a quarterback that you have rated less or below these other guys. You're going to have to try to make it work. I think something along those lines became the deal.
Well, you really think Mara would have not looked? You think they didn't consider the other three quarterbacks because of Mara? I don't know if they would have gone
I
that
think it's
route.
all about, I think it was tied to the look of the Jones piece in the contract. I think he was willing to let him go if you think these guys are so much better. But
Oh, I see.
guys that might have to
I
sit.
hope that's not the case, because
But
that means
I
he's
agree.
interfering.
That's really weird. But here's the other thing. I watched an interview with Rich Eisen and JJ McCarthy, and I just saw it again this morning. I watched it again. It was prior to the draft. He asked him, "Do you know where you're going?"
He thought he was going to the Giants.
He thought he was going to the Giants.
Yes, he
The
did.
team he spent the most time with. He named all this. He thanked everybody in the organization. Talked about how the concepts were the same. That the ones they ran at Michigan were similar to the ones at Alabama, because they had a coach from Alabama went to Michigan, and that Daboll was running very similar concepts and schemes and formations, and he knew it really well. That's weird.
After I saw that interview, I thought McCarthy was going to the Giants too. I had the same reaction that you did. And it's funny that you said that, because I had the same reaction.
So something weird happened there that said, if you are sold on these guys, fine. But after that, because the gap between them and, say, McCarthy or whoever was next, you've got other players that are ranked high. We've already got a quarterback that we're paying $40 million for. You better get him some weapons and do 22. I think that's what some version of that may have occurred, because we talked about it. Why would you continue to roll Daniel Jones out to the midpoint of the season and then go, now we're going to scrap it, so much so that you throw him to third string because you don't want him to get injured? But what difference did it make? You already had seen enough evidence in the first 4, 5, 6, 7 games that said he's not good. Right. So why keep the facade going unless you were told, if you can't make it work like you did in 22, you're coming back, but you got to go as far as you can with him. We got to get our money's worth out of this guy. Well,
didn't we, and again, it's not a hindsight thing. You and I were speculating for a long time before they benched him that if they were going to bench him, it was probably going to be the bye week.
Correct.
So now I said I'd do it sooner because of the injury risk. I'd say the longer they wait, the more the risk.
Sure.
But we kept trying to figure when they would do it. You know, what would be the good place to bring in DeVito to start. And so I think the one thing I do think is I do think they had in the back of their mind that if this thing went sideways, they were going to make the switch at the bye after the Panthers game. Because the Panthers were so bad too. I think they made the decision. It was a good place to make the switch, but also, my God, we can't even beat the Panthers. And then again, everyone talks about the signature play of Daniel being the one where he tripped over his feet against, ironically, Philadelphia. I think his signature play with the Giants was the flea flicker.
Yeah.
And he you can't get any more Daniel Jones than that.
I agree.
Oh my God.
I agree with you there, but I'm actually going to change it. I have a signature play because he did it twice. The 2020 season opening game, Pittsburgh. He rolls to his left, and then he's got pressure in his face, and he decides to try to throw it when the guy's right in his face. It gets tipped up, it gets intercepted. Fast forward to 24. You're playing the Bengals. You roll around. A defender gets in your face. You decide to chuck it. It gets tipped and intercepted. Those are scoring opportunities completely erased because you panicked and did something stupid. And that, to me, is signature Daniel Jones.
All right. So let's keep this moving. So say they fire Daboll. What are we doing? What are we doing?
All right. So
where are you going?
Let's go three options. I'll go first since you threw to me first. Three options. I think obviously you want Vrabel, but I just don't think we're going to be able to pull that off.
Right.
I wish we could. So I'm going to say Vrabel anyway. The second option for me is still what I've told you a couple of times already, and I'm not going to back off from it now because it would seem disingenuous.
Right.
I think Arthur Smith has to be a consideration because he's done things with a mobile quarterback, and you're going to be needing somebody of that ilk to make it work with the system that we're going to. And the guys that are coming out, some of them are lacking some of the passing skills, Milrow. So I think you're going to want a guy who can kind of make an offense work with guys who might not be just a drop back and can gun it all over the place. Then your third option, and I'm anti. I can't do the Spags thing, so I'm going to stay way away from that. Just cannot do it. You obviously want Ben Johnson. He's going to have his picks to where he wants to go, so that's not going to happen. I still think, I personally, and I don't think the Giants would do it, but I reach back out to Brian Flores and say, listen, we effed up. we effed up royally. By the way, I think Bill Belichick did that on purpose, by the way. We would like a second chance with you. I don't give a shit about the lawsuit. That's a whole different thing entirely. We want to interview you.
That would be an interesting pick, because that would be really odd given the lawsuit. So I wouldn't discount it, but that would be, I know it's a defensive guy. So
sure.
yeah.
Now, what about you?
All right, I'm going to make a lot of people mad. So I want to preface my remark, but I'm not good at picking coaches, because the one thing I've learned is it's a lot like quarterbacks. You never know where the good ones, the great ones, are going to come from. If you could go back in time, you'd grab the guy out in San Francisco right now, because he's doing. And who thought when Andy Reid left Philadelphia, he would have a renaissance like he did in Kansas City?
Right.
You know, they were glad. Philadelphia fans were thrilled they got rid of Andy Reid. You just never know. So you can have a retread come back, and he can bomb again, or he could be one. Look at Bill Belichick in Cleveland. When he started his coaching,
Sure.
no one ever thought he was going to become a Hall of Fame. I mean, some people think the Lombardi Trophy. Some of the lusters come off now, but the Lombardi Trophy should be renamed the Belichick Trophy. That's how good he was with the Patriots. So, anyways, I'm digressing. Vrabel makes the most sense, and he's interviewing with the Jets today, and he's the guy that I would make a full court press for, and not because I think he's an amazing, great, fantastic, superior coach. I just think he's the safest guy that would create an identity like Cy talked about, and he's a defensive guy.
Yeah.
So he checks a lot of boxes for me. Would I like somebody better? Probably, but I know he's a playoff caliber coach, and I know he knows how to build a tough physical football team. And between you and me, John, this is my subjective bias. I'm tired of these offensive whizzes that come up short. I want a defensive guy coming in here, and I want to get back to just being tough. If we're going to lose, let's at least lose with some toughness, because I can't stand the wussiness.
Agreed.
So, all right. So that's number two. This is the one that everyone's mad at me about. Is I think I would take another roll of the dice with Spags, and there's a number of reasons here, and some of them people are going to say that's not a reason, but I think there's a comfort level with him and the Giants organization. He knows the swamp he's coming into. He knows how the Maras and the Tisches operate. I think first of all, anyone judging him on his interim stay here, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, think of it as a job. Say you were working for a corporation, and your boss screwed up so badly on a project that at the very last minute they put you in charge, and then you got blamed for the project. That's how I look for it. Like, you can't, any guy that comes as an interim coach in December, I don't judge it. So everyone's basing it on what happened in St. Louis. And I think he's a much better coach than he showed in St. Louis. Again, defensive guy, knows the Giants. I think he outcoaches people. When I watch Kansas City, I feel like they're outcoaching teams on defense. They got tremendous talent, but I also feel like they're coaching. And again, safe choice. I know people disagree with me on that. The other one is, I would not automatically write off Ben Johnson. And I know that's the sexy pick because of their number one scoring offense. But what I like about him, and I'm countering what I just said about I want a defense. They do stuff that I've never seen before, and it's just fun.
Yeah.
So they do things that I'm like, wow, that's something. And he's the only offensive guy right now that I would be, he'd be somebody at the top of my because I think he's another guy that has showed that he can work with quarterbacks too, and that he's just so damn innovative, and he's fun, and they think outside the box. And one other thing too, last comment is, the last two guys I mentioned, I think they probably learned something under the guys that they're coaching for. So I think Reid probably had I think Spags has probably learned a tremendous amount from coaching under Andy Reid. and I think Ben Johnson's learned a tremendous amount by being under Campbell in Detroit. I like those guys, and I like some of the guys Size mentioned, but those are the guys that I would definitely bring in an interview. Two defensive guys, and then the one offensive guy that just makes me go, "Wow, that's no." So
there is one other guy, and he will technically be free to pick where he wants to go. And in the past, I would have been like, "Hell no." But
Gruden?
Mike McCarthy.
Oh,
Mike McCarthy is going to have his choice of what he wants to do, whether he wants to re-sign with the Cowboys or some other team might come forward. And quite frankly, I think I would be okay with a McCarthy coming in. He's already used to working with an egomaniac, so that part of it is, an owner who interferes with almost everything. This is a little different. The owner doesn't blatantly interfere with
no,
stuff.
I don't think. I wouldn't call him Mayor an
So I
egomaniac
think you
either.
could no, but what I mean
Yeah.
is you've navigated those kind of waters, so to speak. And his teams are fairly consistent. What they don't do is they don't win the big game. But hey, what do we know about big games? We haven't been in one since 2011. So, I think I would not discount that one completely per se. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're.
Well, what
we're
about
at
the guy that I just briefly mentioned? I don't think they touched him with the 10th pole. But
with
what about Gruden?
See, here's my problem with Gruden. I saw a couple of articles that said Gruden's going to be high on people's list, but I've also saw a couple of other articles that basically talked about Gruden's lawsuit against the NFL. This isn't just
I
against a
think
couple
he's
of teams.
blacklisted. Yeah.
He blatantly has called out the commissioner. I think you're going to have a lot to answer for if you, with the other owners, if you go and bring in the guy that he's suing all of you. I don't think the Flores thing is different. That he's still in the league.
Yeah.
His deal was he felt he wasn't adequately considered for a job, that it was more of a token thing, and may or may not be true. But it has less ramifications than the stuff Gruden did that somebody leaked
Gruden
out.
is calling out the whole rotten structure.
Well, somebody leaked it out in the NFL. Someone allowed those emails to get out because they were in the past.
Right.
And that's NFL stuff. That was intentional.
That had the feeling of almost DC politics.
Yes.
Some dirty politics about, all right, we're gonna screw you. You think you're gonna do something? We're gonna screw you.
Yes.
So yeah, so I kind of agree. So I thought he was toast when that happened. That he was blacklisted. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But again, the fans out there, when I was younger too, I used to believe the same thing. Don't go with a retread coach. He's never going to succeed, but I don't believe that anymore. And then part of me wants a little bit more, wants somebody who knows how to run something now. And that I've sort of, I'm going back on myself because I was talking about, let's not lower the bar. But part of me just wants somebody who, and that's would argue in favor of your McCarthy kind of thing. I'm not a big McCarthy guy, but again, you got somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. There's no learning curve. They've been to the dance. They know what it's like. There's no surprises. They know what a team is supposed to look like. And that's why after Ray Hanley, they brought in Dan Reeves, and he did stabilize it for 1 year.
So the Giants went rookie head coaches, NFL head coaches, Ray Perkins, Bill Parcells, Ray Hanley, and then they were like, okay, we went to an old school guy who had done it before. And guess what? We kind of similar to what happened with Daboll in a way. We win that first year a little bit surprisingly, considering what we were coming off from. I mean, people forget LT was coming off the Achilles injury of 92. Right. Sims had been beaten up quite a bit and wasn't even the starter off and on during the Hanley years. And then we have that magical 93 year that who knows what it might have been if they had beaten the Cowboys in the last game of the season instead of losing on the field goal in overtime. Right. So,
but that was on Reeves too. They played for the time in that game.
Sure. Yeah. He was, they're the Denver, the New Jersey Broncos. But then you went rookie coach with Fossil, and that worked out for a while. And then you went retread with Coughlin, and that was great. Since that time, we have basically gone, and don't give me Shermer as a retread. He was never really a full head coach. Right. So we've gone boom, boom, boom. Now we went Daboll coming in, and we thought we had figured it out. if you're going to go away again, it's either got to be somebody who is really in demand,
Like Ben
not just,
Johnson.
not a Joe Judge who came out of nowhere.
Right.
It has to be really in demand, or he has to have done it before, because you've got to change the culture is the thing that keeps being talked about. I saw Carl Banks brought it up, and I keep asking Carl to come on the show. So hopefully this won't ruin it, Carl, if you want to come on. But I'm going to tell you, you mentioned culture, and you said culture mattered to people like Harry Carson and Lawrence Taylor and whatever at the end of '83, even though they were 3-12-1, and they to win a game late, that meant something. No, that's not true. Culture was already established. You made the playoffs in '81. You had a very good winning team. There was a strike year in '82. Your coach ended up leaving. It was a rookie head coach in '83. That was different. Brian Daboll's been the coach since 22. We keep going downwards. You don't build culture off winning in the last 2 games of the freaking 3rd season of your coaching career after losing 10 straight in that year. Culture's already been established, and it seems to be more of a country club, and that's a bit of a problem.
I can't imagine Carl really believes some of the things that he's saying right now.
It does
Hope
seem
not.
odd. It does
I
seem
hope
odd.
not, because we've seen snippets of him let his guard down and not say nice things. And I can't reconcile that Carl, or the Carl of the Super Bowl teams, being okay with any of the crap he's seeing right now.
Yeah. No.
I hope not, Carl. Again, I understand you got a job and you got employers, but I don't know. I hope the Giants aren't going the way that some people are actually, and we haven't seen that. We've talked about it. I hope they're not really going the way that they're circling the wagons and they consider us all the bad guys. Now, we're trying to help you.
Yeah.
We're your audience.
We're,
We're
we
the ones that want to see. And again, we're frustrated as frustrated as you are. And some of this, and we're not always right, but my goodness, you're making a lot of bad choices.
maybe don't always base your opinion and your thoughts on the people whose paychecks come from you. We pay to actually follow you. We pay to watch your games. We pay your merchandise. I'm wearing LT's jersey. We pay for this shit. We're investing time. I can guarantee you that there isn't one person in my life who hasn't told me I waste too much time on the Giants. Not just on the Giants, but on football in general. It's always been a thing since I was a little kid. It was important to me. Sundays was football day for me. It was on the 7th day. God created football. That's how it was for me. Football was it. And I made sure that I watched the Giants no matter what, but I watched other games too. I'm big into football. You are killing a lot of that. And it's not just because you're bad. It's because you don't seem to realize it. This organizational arrogance that I've mentioned before seems to permeate every single thing that they do.
Well, it's the other thing too. It's like the thing I mentioned earlier. I don't know if they understand where their fans are coming from. The fans actually want them to lose this game on Sunday to help them. They're okay with you losing this game in order to make the team better. We don't want the team to lose to embarrass it. We want the team to lose so we have a higher draft pick. And the people that say that doesn't matter when you're picking at the top of the draft, they were asleep last year because we lost out on the quarterback. Again, if Drake May or Jaden Daniels are here right now, even with this record, we have a different outlook on this team. The problem with this team right now is, where the hell are we going to get the quarterback? Because if you don't have the quarterback,
that'll be another show, because we do have some thoughts.
Yeah,
we have some thoughts on that one.
That's the problem. So.
No, I'm with you, and that is going to be a big discussion point, because I will say, and I don't want to delve too much in it because that will also be for another show. There is a guy at the top of this draft that I'm almost hoping that we luck into.
Who?
Like, I'm really big right now on Abdul Carter. The Giants.
There's a thread on him today. Somebody saying he's the best player in the draft.
I watched some things of him. I watched some highlights of him, and you look at those highlights and then go back and look at LT highlights. Mm-hmm. The one thing that separated LT from so many other linebackers, and there were a lot of good ones, by the way, Pat Swilling, Derek Thomas, Hugh Green was out there, Andre Tippett, those guys. LT could change his body angle to almost be parallel to the ground as he would go under a tackle and come out of it still sprinting. He could spin and get away from guys. He could use moves. He could throw his body, dip his shoulder, and go around guys like almost nobody that had been seen before. You watch Carter and how he plays, it is very similar.
All right, 2 doom and gloom reactions to that. So Giants win on Sunday. We drop down to 8 or 9. He's off the board. He's
Correct.
not going to be there. The other thing is too is Shane returns. Does Shane's pride get in the way? And he goes, "Well, we've got Kayvon Thibodeau. We don't need that. We don't need another guy like that." That's where the pride could
True.
come in and start impacting taking the best player available to refix. Because if you bring in a new GM and you bring in a new head coach, no, we've talked about this before. Nobody's safe, and you hopefully get what Shane and Daboll were supposed to do and started doing was just say we're going to build this from the bottom up and get this right. We're gonna and if the quarterback's not there this year, we're gonna fix the trenches, and then we'll get our quarterback next year. And because they're going to have a bad year next year, given the record that they have now. I hate to tell you, Giants fans, unless something
Well,
weird happens with those teams.
let's
Yeah,
see how Monday shakes out.
yeah.
Because then we have a lot to talk about from there. I do think that I think we are going to go after a quarterback, but I don't necessarily think it's in the first round of the draft. I think they're going to try to trade for one. I think we heard hints about what they were already thinking, and if that were true, and we gave it away in the last show that it was Matthew Stafford.
Right.
If that were true, that actually was a discussion they were having, that means within the organization, they felt like Neighbors, Robinson, Slayton, Hyatt, Johnson, those guys
Right.
were all being done a disservice with the quarterback throwing them the ball. That if we get a guy who can look what he did with a Puka Nakua, who was not a first round draft pick, by the way. I believe he went in the 5th round. Look at what he did with those guys. What could he do with this talent? What could our talent do with him? I
And didn't
think
Daboll already say that too?
competent quarterback play. Look what
Yeah.
it did. And he's talking about Drew Lock, by the way.
Yeah.
So I just have a feeling that's maybe now one other weird thing, and then we're gonna call it because we
Yeah.
went longer than we said.
Yeah.
Brandon Jacobs, and I don't give it a lot of credit per se, but he did say something very interesting on X earlier today. He said, I have an odd feeling or an odd thought that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are going to end up together in New England. Now, the only way that can happen is if New England has more than one first-round pick. And the only way I could see that occurring.
Oh, you don't think they trade Drake May?
I'm not saying it. I'm just saying what Brandon Jacobs said. He shared that. He said he's been very close with Shedeur Sanders and the Sanders family. He's just saying, he goes, I sounds crazy. He goes, I wouldn't discount it. And that would be interesting.
That would be very interesting.
But we would still pay. We would still be bent over a barrel because you're still trying to get the guy that they wanted a ton for the year before. They're going to want more this time around.
But see what the importance is of not winning the Eagles game.
Right.
Because if we have the 4th pick, I don't think that's going to happen anyway.
I don't either. But I'm just saying
it's going to happen. You'd have to have the 4th pick or somewhere around there. If you drop down to 7 or 8 or 9, that's not going to work because if they want to get both, you can't drop down that far.
I do think Minnesota's in a great position to trade McCarthy, and I'm beginning to think it's going to happen more than I thought it was before. The one thing that's restricting is he's coming off a knee injury.
Yeah, so did you see that? I don't know if he misspoke, but Schefter said that was an ACL.
See, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So he was talking to somebody. I forget what show it was. I saw a Twitter clip of it, but somebody said, "Whoa, wait, this is the first time we've heard it's an ACL." So Schefter was talking, and he mentioned it was an ACL injury. So I don't know if he misspoke or not, but I haven't seen any follow up on that, and I don't know if he went back and corrected himself or it's been confirmed. But he said an ACL at that point. So which doesn't mean it's a devastating, but it's significant. It's not
sure. Because you're not guaranteed. Now the good thing is it happened way back in the summer. So he's had the entire, you're going to have the entire year as opposed to in season, something happened, but he did get it cleaned up, by the way, afterwards. So he's had a surgery and he had a second surgery. That's not good. But I'm just saying there's more and more talk that and it's not necessarily tied to the Giants, that he's going to be on the trade market, which makes even more sense why the Vikings picked up Jones. If you're going to re-sign Darnold, now you got a vet backup. You could get by, and the what you could dangle, because who knows how far the Vikings
if they could somehow finagle a McCarthy who you don't have to worry about his knee and have Malik Neighbors too, then that would be okay. I don't know if they can do that now. We'll see. That would be a
We'll see.
solution. My concern with this, that would be is I don't know if Minnesota. I'm not convinced Minnesota's going to get rid of either one of them, and I don't know why Daniel would want to stay in Minnesota because I think Daniel wants to. I think Daniel's got like I said last show. I think he's got an ego, and he's going to want to go to some place where he knows he has a chance to start in
Well, and I
his
think,
mind. In
and
his
I
mind,
think too. Keep in mind where did he grow up?
yeah,
Where's he from? He's from North
Carolina.
Carolina. The
Well, what do you
Carolina.
think? Last thing, quick. What do you think is going to happen with Bryce Young?
See, that's the thing. I actually think they'll trade him to somebody else who's going to give peanuts for him, or it could even be a 6-4 swap so that you still stay in the first. If so, let's say Sanders and Ward both went boom boom,
Right.
and now we're still at 4. If Carolina said, "I'll give you Bryce Young in our first round pick so we can move up 2 spots," would you do it?
I think if Daboll comes back, that becomes more realistic.
Right.
I think if Daboll comes back, that something like that's more realistic. And that's not me saying I'm a big Bryce Young fan. I think, like you have said, if he's coming back, they can't go rookie. They've got to have somebody
They got to
who
win games. I
they
mean,
got to
they got
win games. Um and the Giants Panthers game turned around his trajectory. I mean, it looked like he was on, it's not a given that he's going to be okay, but it seems like the second half of his season has been much better than the first half of his season. I haven't followed it closely, but it just seems like he's playing better.
and I don't know what I think he's going to be. He's very small. I mean,
Yeah, that
he's
makes me nervous. Yeah,
he's Kyler Murray-ish, but lighter.
right,
Kyler Murray's he's a little shorter, but he's a thicker dude. Bryce Young is thin.
right,
He's a small guy,
right.
but he had nothing. I mean, Adam Thielen. No one remembers Adam Thielen except for back when he played with the Vikings. Has not been good in years. Adam
Right.
Thielen's one of his main targets. He's got like a Coker and a Leggett. I mean, these are guys you've never heard of.
Right.
He played a lot better in the second half of the year. He had some close games with the Bengals, with the Eagles, with the Cowboys. He played good games, and they beat us. I mean, he wasn't
Yeah.
great.
I find it odd that a lot of Giants fans have not mentioned Bryce Young. I would keep an eye on that. Now, I don't have any inside information on that. I'm just saying you either got to get a vet who's kind of washed up or a younger guy who just hasn't worked out where he's been. And it could be a free agent or it could be a trade, but I don't think they can just go in with um obviously rookie. They can't just go have like two rookies coming in. They got to have a veteran. And I don't
Yeah,
think it's going to be just like some backup schlub. I think it's got to be somebody who can compete for the starting job.
and I would keep an eye on one other name, and I don't think he's a good fit for the Giants. But keep an eye on San Francisco. They are pretty much in a win now scenario kind of deal for next year. You've got McCaffrey who's banged up and coming off injury, and he's not getting any younger. And if you gave him a lot of money, you got to come back. Ayuk will be coming off injury. Debo Samuel's contract's up there. You've got a lot of big money tied up with a lot of guys, and their window of opportunity is closing quickly. Brock Purdy's going to be coming up for a big deal, and I don't think they're going to give it to him.
Yeah. I
I
wouldn't if I were them, I wouldn't give
I actually think for next year, and this is pie in the sky, I think they sign in the offseason. I think they sign Aaron Rodgers for basically a 1-year run. He knows he's from the area. They know Rodgers. He loves the whole mystique. And LaFleur was there. I mean, he knows those guys and they know him. They were going to make a run at an old Tom Brady a couple of years ago. That didn't work out. I think Rodgers goes there. I think they trade Purdy while they can, while they still have him on a very controlled piece. And somebody's going to overpay thinking we're going to get Brock Purdy. But without the San Francisco system, I think it's big trouble.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was just going to say that. Then we should get off. But I think Purdy only makes sense given the system you're playing in. I don't think he's your quarterback for a lot of different systems.
Now in Miami with Mike McDaniel, I absolutely think that would work.
Yeah. Yeah. So
anyway,
all right. So we'll wrap it up here. So let us know who you'd look at for coaches, everyone. and whether you think Daboll's on. And I do want to say this. We did get a really good question. Somebody wants us to, I want to get his name right. Shoot, I had it here. So we're starting to get more and more comments on the YouTube channel comment section. And somebody had a good request that they were too young. His father remembers, but he wants us, it's Pike Hudson wants you and I, and this is a whole other discussion, wants us to discuss the what if scenario if Rozelle didn't step in and force George Young on the Giants. What the Giants would have looked like had George Young not come to the team. And what I think where he's coming from is he wants to know really what kind of impact did that have on the franchise as two guys like you and I growing up during that time period. What did George Young mean to us? And that's a whole interesting conversation. And I know where he's coming from on this because I think because his father's in his ear saying this is as bad as it was before George Young was.
Sure.
So he wants to know, and it's a really good question. And you and I are looking for stuff to talk about in the off season, and we're going to have a lot to talk about with coaching, draft, free agency, who's in, who's out, all this other stuff. You and I have talked about ideas for other shows too, but I think we should discuss things like that because I think it's not only a good historical question, but it ties in with current ownership.
Yeah, I mean we could definitely. I think because it would need more than just a couple of minutes.
Yes. And I told him that. I said we might be able to do it for this show.
But I could tell you during that time frame, if you look though, the one thing that they did constantly is they went after John C. Brings this up, the whack-a-mole thing. They did that constantly. They chased success after the expiration date. Fran Tarkenton, but they didn't have other pieces. Craig Morton didn't have other pieces.
Craig Morton,
and Larry Zonka, a guy on the backside. Whoa, we got Zonka. Great, but you didn't get Zonka of the 72 Dolphins. You got him in 78 now, and you're fumbling the ball, and Herman Edwards is returning it for a touchdown.
And Wellington Mara talked about it in one of their historical highlight tapes. He thought they would lose. I think Wellington came too early. I think they're closer to what Wellington thought now. Wellington said he didn't think Giants fans were as patient as they were, that he misjudged them, and he said they were trying to go for the quick fix. And he used that terminology exactly. He said we were trying to go for the quick fix and get competitive again rather than to build through the draft. And he said once they start building through the draft again, and he didn't say George Young by name, but that's who he was talking about. That's when they turned things around. And that was that gets to what you were talking about.
Yeah. And we can talk about, and we'll take that a little bit deeper too, because then there's the philosophy, which is the one argument a lot of people have with Joe Schoen is what is your ultimate philosophy? Because we seem to have different mindsets each draft, not which players, but the importance of certain things where all of a sudden positions become, you walked into it and said, well, we got to. And so we were this round, whatever it is, we got to get a corner in this round, even though we're four deep now.
And the guys we wanted. And what was George Young's philosophy? I'm setting you up.
Oh, he was, you build up the middle and you dancing elephants. You
big planet theory. Planet theory. He said, get big people.
Yep.
So he was like, get big people, out muscle and out physical the other team and beat them up. That was his thing. Was the big, and the Giants, and then we'll get off this because you could not be drafted by the New York Giants unless you had a specific physical characteristics. They would not draft players below certain heights and below certain weights. They just wouldn't do it. They'd be off the board. So, and they also had, which was controversial at the time, they had a very intensive, by themselves, it was outside the other league. They had a psychological test that they gave players.
It's like 400 questions.
It was really long. Really long. So they had this really long psychological test, and they didn't take players if they didn't have the right mindset too. So.
And if you don't remember it, Deion Sanders walked in, they gave him the test. He goes, where are you guys drafting there? And I think the time we were drafting like 19th.
Yeah.
He 19th. He goes, I won't be there then. He gave the test back and walked out. so there's a lot we could talk about, but we'll end it here.
Yeah.
So again, we'll see what happens. We're both on record. We think he should be let go. We think Daboll should be let go. We think both of them should be let go. But if it was one if you're only going to keep one, I'm going to say I think you keep Schoen, you let Daboll go. I think your similar mindset. If you are keeping one, you kind of can keep the GM. You can't keep the coach.
Yeah, I just want them to win.
Yeah.
So if they come back, just win. I'm just so tired of this. It's just
don't win this weekend.
no, don't win this weekend. Yeah, good asterisk. Don't win this. Don't win now. Don't edit that out quick.
Yes.
Yeah, and I said, it's going to come out in a few when the injury report comes out. But I really think this game is an intelligence test for the Giants franchise. If they actually, Daboll may have come out today and said we're going to do everything we can possibly do to win this game, and he didn't really mean it. I think he does. We'll know, but based on the starting lineups, like if they get Malik Neighbors his catches to break the record, and then he comes out for the rest of the game, and Bryce Ford Wheaton's in the game, then I'll be happy. But if they play their starters the full time, and it's say this is to be the worst thing. What if it's like a really close game? It's like 17-17 and we win on a field goal at the end. So we barely beat their backups, their starters, and we drop five spots in the draft.
I think worse than that.
What?
Worse than that is you try to play to let somebody break a record, which I don't. It's a stupid record.
It's a meaningless record at this point.
Brock Bowers already broke it. So unless you're chasing Brock Bowers, who gives a shit about Puka Nakua's record? It's already been broken.
What? No Giants fan is going to go back and remember that year when Malik.
I mean, even his neighbor's going to remember it because you're breaking Nakua's record, but you're not breaking Bowers. Bowers already has it right now, and he's still playing.
Well, the other thing too is,
well, what if he gets hurt?
That's what I was just going to say. What if he tears an ACL? And I know you don't normally think like that, and you shouldn't think like that, but those are the kinds of things.
But he's already hurt
right now.
This is the problem. This is what we had. Sorry, this is what we had with the kicker, who was a little injured and then got hurt. And you're like, well, you didn't expect him to get hurt, but he was already hurt. It wasn't like he was totally fine. So if Neighbors is dinged up and he gets injured, you all should be. The Giants should be for sale the next day.
This isn't a situation where the Giants are 8-8, and this is the last game of the season, and finishing the year on a winning note would make any difference. This game is meaningless to us, other than that we can hurt ourselves.
And even worse, it's meaningless to Philadelphia. So beating them means nothing.
John, I think they know that they can hurt the Giants. And I don't think the Giants know that they can hurt themselves. That's how pathetic this is. That I really think that. I think they know they can hurt the Giants. If this was a I'd be more interested to know if the Giants were 6 wins. I'd be more interested to know if the Eagles were more likely or less likely to play their play their starters or not. Part of me says the Eagles want to hurt the Giants here.
Maybe, but I'm going to leave you with one other ugly thought. Do you remember Matt Flynn?
Sure.
He's a quarterback with the Packers and then ultimately signed with Seattle.
Kind of an obscure name, but yeah.
But he signed with Seattle a very lucrative contract after throwing like 500 yards in the last game of a season before he became a free agent. The last thing that I want to see is Drew Lock put up 420, touchdowns, and the Giants go, oh my God, 8 touchdowns in 2 weeks. This is our bridge quarterback. We're going to sign him for 3 years, $50 million.
I told you last week, or earlier this week, I said I wouldn't discount them re-signing Drew Lock. I don't think it's going to happen. I wouldn't.
Just keep Matt Flynn in your head if he starts throwing touchdown passes early on. This is the worst case scenario.
Depending on what else they did at quarterback, I wouldn't be. I'm not a Drew Lock guy. I would not be 100% against him being one of the guys in camp, but not on the contract they already signed him to. It would have to be like a league minimum kind of thing. I don't think they're going to do that.
I don't know how you can.
I don't either.
You leapfrogged him with Tommy DeVito.
No, I don't. I don't know why they should be playing Boyle. They should be playing.
I want to see Eric Gray. Let Eric Gray play.
Eric Gray should be playing. They should have all these guys, as many guys as they can bring up from the practice squad. They've got a few people that are going to have to go on IR because there's 4 guys that didn't practice all week, so we can put 4 guys on IR.
Do we still have that foreign exemption guy at running back on the practice squad? Is Platzgummer anywhere around?
No,
Oh, darn it. We should bring him up. Bring him up and play him.
Yeah, that would be a good time to play him. Lose the game. There's nothing to gain from this. On that note, my last thing. Giant.
We're close. We almost
I
did
know. Yeah.
We did a half hour plus another 25 minutes.
Yes.
So anyway, so with that being said,
we didn't do it.
But we're better though. This was good. Okay. So like, subscribe, comment, of course, and we'll catch up. We'll I think Monday we'll probably be back on.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll go live. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
And our opening on Monday and we don't know what it's going to be, but our opening on Monday will probably tell the mood. So
yes, exactly.
If nothing else, just watch the opening. We don't know what it's going to be, but it'll tell the mood.
Yes, just Matt Flynn. Yeah. That's all. That's a good thing. All right, so I appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.